She saw everyone ignore the billionaire's deaf daughter. Then she spoke to her in sign language. The silence wasn't what broke Isabella Cruz's heart that evening at the charity gala. It was the way 12-year-old Lila Davenport sat perfectly still in her designer dress, watching hundreds of adults pretend she didn't exist. Her billionaire father, Nathan Davenport, worked the room like a general commanding troops. His deep laugh carried across the hall, his handshake lingered just long enough to flatter, and his magnetic presence drew senators, CEOs, and foreign dignitaries into his orbit. Meanwhile, his daughter remained invisible, sitting at her table like a ghost in plain sight. Lila lived in a world without sound, and the world around her rarely bothered to bridge that gap. Isabella, a pediatric nurse, had spent her career listening to children who didn't always use words, children whose wheelchairs spoke for them, whose computers translated their thoughts, whose hands painted entire conversations in the air. And she recognized the hollow look in Lila's eyes immediately. It was the same expression Isabella had seen in too many hospital rooms, the resigned acceptance of being overlooked, misunderstood, and quietly forgotten. The opulent ballroom of the Magnolia Grand Hotel in Atlanta buzzed with conversations about tax write-offs, investment portfolios, and networking opportunities. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, scattering prisms across marble floors polished to a mirror-like shine. Atlanta's elite floated from table to table, their laughter echoing off gilded walls. Isabella felt distinctly out of place in her thrift store gown. Her hospital had received a last-minute invitation, and she'd come hoping to secure funding for their new children's wing. But as she watched Lila, her mission shifted. Nathan Davenport dominated every circle he entered. Just that month, Forbes had crowned him the Titan of Transit for his multi-billion-dollar infrastructure deal connecting major southern cities by high-speed rail. His wealth and influence were legendary, his presence magnetic. Yet Isabella noticed something subtle. Every few minutes, Nathan's eyes darted nervously toward his daughter before quickly returning to his audience. There was love there, buried beneath layers of corporate armor, but also helplessness. At table 14, Lila methodically rearranged her silverware, the clinking sound drowned out by champagne flutes and string quartet music. The adults around her discussed her father's empire as if she were furniture. A well-meaning woman leaned over and shouted slowly into the girl's ear, as if volume could pierce silence. Lila's expression stayed politely blank, the carefully practiced mask of a child who had learned to endure rather than belong. Isabella's chest tightened. She couldn't watch anymore. Crossing the ballroom, she slipped into the empty chair beside Lila. No grand introduction, no pitying tone. She simply raised her hands and signed. "Hello, my name is Isabella. I love your dress. That shade of blue reminds me of the ocean." The girl's fork clattered against her plate. Her eyes widened in shock, then glistened with tears. She blinked away quickly. For a long moment, she just stared at Isabella's hands as if they were performing a magic trick. "You can sign." Lila's fingers moved with elegant precision. Isabella nodded. "I can. I work with children at the hospital. Many of them use sign language. I thought you might like a real conversation tonight." A smile spread across the girl's face, so radiant it could have powered the entire ballroom. "Nobody here talks to me except my interpreter." Lila signed quickly, but Dad sent her home early. He said it looked too clinical for photographers. Isabella's stomach twisted. She glanced across the room. Nathan Davenport was deep in conversation with two senators, his gestures sharp, his laughter booming. The irony hit her. A man whose voice commanded boardrooms had a daughter whose voice went unheard. "Tell me about yourself." Isabella signed gently. "What do you love to do?" For the next hour, Lila came alive. Her hands danced as she told stories about her passion for astronomy, how she spent nights mapping constellations through her telescope, and how she dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Because animals didn't care whether you could hear them. She told Isabella about baking cookies with the kitchen staff, her private tutor who sometimes forgot to face her when speaking, and how she taught herself to read lips in 3 different languages. Isabella was stunned. The girl was brilliant, funny, and desperate for someone to simply listen. "Most people think I'm stupid because I can't hear," Lila confided, her signs sharp with frustration. "They either ignore me or talk to me like I'm a baby." Dad tries, but he gets frustrated when I don't understand him perfectly. Anger stirred in Isabella's chest. She had seen this too often. Children dismissed, their intelligence overlooked because the world refused to adapt. Lila, you are one of the smartest 12-year-olds I've ever met, she signed firmly. Anyone who doesn't see that isn't worth your time. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden shadow falling over the table. Nathan Davenport stood there, his tailored suit perfectly pressed, his brow furrowed in confusion. Lila, sweetheart, is everything all right here? His voice was warm but unsure, directed entirely at Isabella rather than his daughter. Lila's hands flew into motion, but her father's face remained blank. He understood nothing. Isabella stood and offered her hand. Mr. Davenport, I'm Isabella Cruz. I was just having the most fascinating conversation with your daughter about astronomy. You were talking with her? His confusion deepened. I mean, communication is difficult for Lila. Actually, she communicates beautifully, Isabella corrected gently. She was explaining her theory about the possibility of life on Europa. Quite sophisticated thinking, really. Nathan blinked, glancing between Isabella and his daughter. Something shifted in his expression. Curiosity, maybe even shame. Lila signed something quickly, her eyes shining with excitement. Isabella translated softly. She wants to know if you'd like her to teach you some basic signs. She says she's been wanting to show you how to say, I love you properly. The mighty businessman suddenly looked vulnerable. She want to teach me? Lila nodded eagerly, patting the chair beside her. Nathan sat, shoulders tense as if he were walking into the most intimidating boardroom of his life. His daughter took his large hand in hers and demonstrated. The sign for I love you combines 3 letters, she explained with patient precision. I-L-N-Y. She guided his fingers into the right shape. Nathan's jaw trembled. His eyes filled with tears as he copied her. When he finally signed it back, awkward but sincere, Lila flung her arms around his neck. For the first time that evening, the noise of the ballroom faded. Father and daughter sat cocooned in their own world, speaking a language deeper than words. Over the following months, Isabella received regular updates from the Davenport household. Nathan had hired a full-time ASL instructor, and he and Lila practiced together every morning during their conversation hour. Their mansion was soon filled with post-it notes labeling objects in both English and ASL. The staff began learning, too, turning their home into an inclusive space where Lila's language wasn't foreign but natural. Nathan also established the Hands of Hope Foundation, dedicated to funding sign language education and promoting deaf awareness in schools nationwide. Lila sent Isabella video clips, her father slowly but proudly signing complete sentences, the two of them laughing at his mistakes, and the adaptive technology they'd installed throughout their home, flashing doorbells, vibrating alarm clocks, captioned security systems. But the most touching message came 6 months later, a handwritten invitation from Lila herself. Please come to Dad's first public speech in sign language. It read in neat cursive. He says it won't be perfect, but I think it will be amazing. The conference hall in downtown Atlanta buzzed with anticipation. Entrepreneurs, educators, and advocates for the deaf and hard of hearing filled the seats. Isabella sat in the front row, her heart pounding. Nathan Davenport stepped onto the stage. No booming voice, no commanding laugh, just hands. Beside him, Lila beamed with pride as her father delivered his keynote address entirely in American Sign Language. He spoke about accessibility in business, about listening with more than ears, about building bridges not only across cities, but across human divides. When he finished, the room erupted in a standing ovation. Lila pressed her palms to the floor, smiling at the vibration she could feel through her shoes. Afterward, Lila ran to Isabella and signed quickly, her eyes shining. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked through me. Isabella hugged her tightly, but inside she knew the truth. She hadn't rescued Lila that night at the Magnolia Grand. She had simply noticed her, seen her brilliance where others refused to look. Sometimes the most profound conversations happen in complete silence. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give another human being is the simple acknowledgement of their voice, however it manifests. In a world rushing too fast, where people mistake loudness for importance. Isabella had learned that true listening often begins with the eyes, not the ears. And on that night, watching father and daughter united at last, she understood something deeper. The things that matter most in life transcend sound entirely.